I'm having a talk with pianist Tania Stavreva. She's in New York City, uh, in her apartment, away from the heat and humidity there going on. Yeah, it's a heat wave, I think, on the East Coast
I
going on.
wouldn't say so. It's finally nice. I like the warm weather. We had a terrible winter, so to me this is just
Ah, wonderful. Well, anyway, she.
we joke about me because a lot of my friends they say, "Oh, if I'm in a group with people and I feel good because everywhere there is the AC, it's always so cold." So I
Yeah.
say, "Oh, I'm starting to feel good, so probably others are dying."
By the way, that exactly speaks to who you are, uh, and what your CD is. Fresh, full of individual personality. We're talking about rhythmic movement. We'll get some more details about this CD in just a moment. Put out, what was that, 2017 or 2016? I'm trying to remember.
2017.
2017, and proceeded to win a million awards, like 14 awards or something. It's incredible.
Thank you.
But about your personality, about your pianism also, the way you play the instrument. As I've mentioned, we've had a talk earlier about lots of free improvisation, and yet you're a magnificent classical pianist. It's just a marvelous combination of talents. Composer. Why don't we start right there? Let's give the folks the information. Um, I have written, I guess, maybe 3 months ago or something like that, maybe more, a review of this wonderful CD by Tania Stavreva, pianist. It's called Rhythmic Movement. It's available on her website. And if you go to my website, performingartsreview.net, you can just, you're a click away. You can go and buy the CD and also have a browse of Tanya's website. Um, Tanya, you want to give us the website address just so I've got it correct? Yours.
It's www.taniastavreva.com. It's pronounced Stavreva, my last name.
Tanya Stavreva, and that's how you have to do it, right? You have to basically spell it out for folks. It's a little tricky. Bulgarian born, now New York
I
City
was
based.
born and
Yep.
raised in Bulgaria, yes.
Yeah. And having what? By the way, this CD was your first. I hope and presume another one is down the pike here in another year or
It's my
so.
debut, this city, yes.
Yeah.
It was a big journey for me.
Stunning. And as I started out to say in the beginning of the conversation, so personal and so personable, in that the CD, I think, is just so entertaining from beginning to end on numerous levels, to say nothing of your virtuosity at the instrument. As I mentioned earlier, maybe the engineering is just superb. The capture of the instrument, sound wise, is just wonderful. And just the uniqueness of the programming.
Producer, it's his fault. He's amazing, and I'm so honored to be working with him. His name is Ron Saint Germain. It was just really a blessing to be working with him, and I hope to be working on many more records to come with him as well.
Fabulous. And also how cheeky and tongue in cheek, I hope I'm not in trouble yet, is also just the whole design and layout of the CD, the delicious spiked heel. It's quite playful, quite fun, that image. Just the whole thing, you kind of sprawled very sensuously across the piano.
Well,
Hey,
it's very funny. In terms of the album cover, actually, I've never talked in any interviews about it.
yeah.
Uh, I First of all, the photo with the shoe that's inside the CD
Yeah.
was taken by my guest artist, the drummer on track 14, Will Cahoon, who also, by the way, has a passion for photography. He even did an exhibit as a photographer. So we originally thought that the album cover should be just the shoe because that kind of implies the rhythm. And
Mm.
often a lot of pictures focus more on the hands, but pedaling is also a very important part of piano playing, and it's often neglected. And in terms of visual packages, and so we kind of thought that it connects because it's rhythmic movement, feeling the rhythm.
Mhm.
Certain moments are a little bit like a dance. And I myself always play with high heels, but not very
Ah,
high. And I don't like at the very front of the shoe to have a platform. I don't like thick and big platforms. I like to have more of a connection with the pedal. So I know that it does look like a high heel shoe, and a lot of people kind of make jokes about it that it's sort of funky looking, but I decided to keep natural and have shoes that I actually perform with. And so we thought
What
that.
would I have known? But also the other thing is that it is really a fun image.
But we didn't make it
Beautiful
the album
image.
cover though. We decided it's going to be inside the CD because we spoke to several friends and they kind of said, well, if this is your debut, I would like to see your eyes and
Mm.
your face. And the eyes is really a connection with the audience. And we really thought about it. But then that picture that is actually the album cover with the open back dress, um, me and the photographer, his name is Reggie Wilson, were doing a photo shoot for my next press photos. It was probably a few months before the album release, and we were trying different things, and I was doing one of those boring poses like this, this, like this. I don't know if you can see my hands. We were just trying to do like the formal, and then I got so bored. I didn't like how the pictures looked like, and I said, you know what? Let's just do something fun. I know it might look probably not appropriate, so let's just do something fun, and we're not gonna show these pictures to anybody. And then after that, that was one of the pictures with the open back dress. I posted it on my Facebook because I liked the picture, and then a lot of people started liking it.
Hmm.
And it was just on my private profile. I didn't really use it as a press photo at that time. And my producer, we were going through a lot of pictures that I had, casual and professional. And then he said, you know what? I think we should have this picture as the album cover. And I said, how would we have me lying down on the piano? Movement supposed to be energetic. It's supposed to suggest the element of dance and motion and that kind of thing. So I was really, really thinking a lot, but then it really seemed to work out. And then with the letters on the CD sort of moving, that
Yes, yes.
rhythm, and because it's my debut, he was kind of saying, well, you know what, this is very intriguing picture. It's classy, it's elegant, it's beautiful, and you in the way I'm connecting, because I really wanted to be together with the piano. If I didn't have the piano, people wouldn't know if I was really a pianist, probably, if I just had my face, let's say.
Uh,
And so we were talking about that, I remember
so,
last year.
if I may just jump in, I feel actually redeemed from what I said about what I said earlier, which is that it's very, very playful, and you had a great time. You never dreamt you were going to use a shot, and what the particular shots,
we didn't
marvelous
plan
shot.
we didn't plan this photo for the album cover. No, it was
Yeah,
not that kind of a photo shoot where you specifically you're gonna use the
yeah.
images. It was just one of those photos I was kind of having as press photos, and then we thought that's a nice shoot we could use.
Yeah.
So
So everybody watching this, you're gonna see kind of what I mean about this CD. It's playful, it's fun, it's serious, it's virtuosic, beyond any doubt whatsoever. Let's have a little look. I'm just kind of running down what as I was getting ready. I thought I'd just sort of pull some of my quotes about what I said about some of these pieces. For example, I said an eclectic toy chest of music close to the pianist's heart. And that's what we've been chatting about for the past 6 minutes. This is such an intimate, playful, fun CD. It's a conflation of classical virtuosity, as we said, with this kind of relaxed, fresh, improvisatory jazz prowess that you have. Would you go ahead?
yes, I just want to underline that except my compositions, every other piece by classical composers, I play every note the way it's written. And so I don't actually improvise
Yeah.
on the music there. However, I remember when I was working with Mason Bates, you know, this composer, I'm sure, before the recording, he mentioned that he really likes that I play everything the way it's written, but he would like the piece to feel improvisational. So almost as if I was creating it in the moment.
What a
So that
trick.
the challenge and the trick. It was something new in terms of an interpretation. And I did the same thing with Kapustin, the jazz etudes, because they are obviously written music, but I try to take that kind of journey as if I was creating it on the spot or if I was really improvising it. So with the jazzy pieces, because White Lies for Lomax by Mason Bates is a blues fantasy, technically.
It's wonderful. A
So I had
wonderful piece.
fun with this,
Yeah,
definitely.
and by the way, you've just helped describe the scene a little bit better. I didn't mean to imply that everything was improvised on your CD, so I'm
Well,
glad you cleared that up.
I
But there,
improvised
yeah,
strings of the inside of the piano
yes, that piece I
original.
love. We'll talk. I think I'm going to let you loose in a minute just to describe some of these pieces. But so far, you've mentioned all the pieces I found so intriguing. But again, just you've described beautifully this idea of reading. Although I also have recently reviewed pianists who improvise a little bit within standard repertoire, and it's delicious. If you have the chops and you know what you're doing. I've lost my train of thought completely. Where were we? Where were
Well,
we?
we're talking about the particular pieces and
Yeah.
how some
Why
of
don't
the
we
music.
start? Why don't we start there? Kind of give me a rundown. Let's have a quick overview of the pieces that you have composed, including the namesake for the CD. Go.
Well, I just want to say that when you mentioned that I'm a composer, I'm always a little intimidated because I didn't start composing formally until 2012, because somehow classical pianists are never encouraged to do that at music schools and
Hmm.
conservatories for classical
Interesting.
music specifically. We never take classes, or if we take some sort of an improvisational class, it's not a jazz improv, it's something more abstract, and it's often not really underlined so much in the curriculum.
Hmm.
So composers always compose. They study piano, let's say, as a secondary instrument, but that's really more to kind of help with their composition and how they're orchestrating. Instrumentalists always play the music by the composers, but it's usually not both altogether. And I was working with a theater company in 2012 on off Broadway, and it was actually also my acting debut. That was kind of by an accident because I had to memorize some lines, but overall I was the pianist at that event, and it was The Tempest by Shakespeare. So the director had this unique idea of connecting modern classical music with the modern adaptation, but he always kept the Shakespeare language the same. So he thinks that the Shakespeare language is music itself, it has rhythm, and it was very important to match that rhythm with the music I played. However, sometimes he wanted to speed up some things or he
Hmm.
wanted to end some sections a little earlier. And I remember one of the pieces for the show was Ravel, the second movement of the piano concerto in G major, just the opening section. And I just wanted to go to the actual ending session before the orchestra really starts. But he
Hmm.
wanted me to end earlier, kind of in the middle of nowhere, and he wanted me to invent the ending. And I said,
Ah.
look, this is the music of Ravel. I'm not going to edit composer's work or change it. This is not how we do it. So we argued even about this. And then for a couple of themes that he couldn't find the right music, sometimes he would find the right title and he would think that's the right music, but then the music wouldn't sound the way he wanted it to sound. Then I said, you know what? Probably instead of looking through more classical repertoire, I might just compose something for you the way you describe it. So, track number one on this CD was the theme for Caliban from The Tempest. It was a little slower, a little angrier, a little shorter. And then later on, I decided to kind of speed it up and make it sort of a dance like character. Because in Bulgarian traditional rhythms, as you may know from Bela Bartok, because he was the ethnomusicologist of those Eastern European rhythms, in Bulgarian folk music, the rhythm of 7/8 is for the dance Rachinica. There is a special dance
That's
called Ratchet.
specific. I didn't know how specific.
Yes, in 7/8. So I wanted to have that kind of dance-like element, so I speed it up and I composed a little longer, so it became actually its own short little piece, and I had a lot of fun with that. And how to say, compared to friends of mine who were composition majors who did doctorals in composition and write symphonies, and you say I'm composer, I'm so intimidated, you know. So, but I was,
My
of
turn.
course,
It's my turn. Which is that I list you as pianist, composer, and by the way, you're not alone because so far of, as I've mentioned, of these CDs that I've been reviewed by so
thank
many
you.
pianists, they are indeed pianist composers, and so you
I'm
need
in
you,
this category.
but you need not have any shame. You're moving forward. It's brilliant. I love it. This diversity of activity that you and so many other great pianists are now really becoming more involved in. I love it. Okay. Want to move on? Hey, let me point out just a couple of composers. Let's do it that way. For example, Inastera, the Danzas Argentinas. Can you give me a little overview of that wonderful piece? Here's what I wrote. I wrote vividly colorful images of people, places, and things, exactly Stavrova's interpretive coin. And I believe everybody who's watching this interview knows what I'm saying, that you are full of the world. Go ahead now. Tell me about the Inastera.
I really fell in love with the music of Hinastera from the first time I heard his music performed, and I have played the entire piano sonata as well as the American preludes, and I even composed a tribute to Hinastera. The you know the American prelude number 6, the fast
Yes.
one. It's intended to be 46 seconds, so I composed a prelude called that I decided to title Bulgarian Prelude because I'm Bulgarian, and he's Argentinian, but he called them American preludes, so it's very international. And it's very similar to actually the number six American Prelude, but I decided to do it as a tribute to Hinastera during his centennial year. That was 2016. And I always feel so much passion with the
Mm.
rhythms that he creates, especially in the last movement of the piano sonata. It's kind of like a rock and roll sort of energy, and that's how the idea of adding drums to that piece came. Because on track 7, I play the exact original piece, the way it's written by the composer, and on track 14, we interpret that piece with the drums. So
See what I mean
I
about
usually
crazy?
I usually don't like to change something by a classical composer, but I just feel this is so natural. And by the way,
Exactly.
Will Cahoon got so inspired. He loved working on this project with me. It's something he's never done. So he said, Tanya, we should really do more of this. And I said, well, you know what? I don't think I'm going to look into Prokofiev, Bartok, or more Hinastera. I think what we should do is that I should compose more music because I feel like this was an exception and we shouldn't touch other pieces and try to make them with drums exactly. Maybe we can find one or two more, but
Mm-hmm.
I feel like the next step is piano and drums as original composition.
Yeah, by yourself, the composer. Oh, wonderful. And one other thing, help, I'm trying to remember. It's something about you're still a little hesitant to kind of play around a touch with extant masterpieces, shall we say? I'm giving a big generic statement here, but again, I have had when the energy is right, when it feels right, as it did clearly in this instance, do it. There you go. That's my thought. Well, let's see. Where were we? How about now? Let's change the pace altogether with the dark side of the sun. Tell me
Oh,
about your composition, uh, the dark side of the sun. I wrote fabulously evocative improvisation created inside the guts of the piano.
okay, well, if I say the truth about it, I don't want to insult too many people. So it was 2011, I believe, when I met a drummer. His name is Dave Lombardo from the band Slayer. It's a metal band. And that usually has never been the case. This type of genre has never been the kind of genre I was following at that time. But then I got introduced to certain type of bands that I really enjoyed. The rhythmic drive. They're actually very connected to classical, and some of them use classical elements.
Mm,
Except that the distorted sound is always something disturbing to the traditional classical
mm,
person in general. I know where they're coming from because when I first got exposed to the music, I got a headache, and then later on, when I had more friends with rock bands and I got used to the distorted sound, that's when I started appreciating that more.
mm.
And I'm a fan of rock music, I would say. So
Just
we did meet at the Grammy Awards in 2011 in Los Angeles, and we collaborated. And one of their songs, that's one of their most popular songs, I believe it's something called Rain in Blood or something like that, starts with thunders.
charming.
So you
Raining
know,
blood.
we played the Hinastera together back then.
Ah,
That's how the experiment came by accident because he wanted to collaborate, and I said to myself, well, how do I play with the drums? Actually, I really like the idea, but I'm not sort of prepared. What am I supposed to play? And I remember sending some samples with percussive style of playing as Hinastera. So when we were in the practice room, the first thing I started playing was just the Hinastera. He started playing, and then I realized how cool is it with the drums. During the making of the album, he was on tour with Slayer, so he wasn't available. And my producer called Will Cahoon, and when he called me, he said, "Would you like to collaborate with Will Cahoon?" I said, "Oh, sure." So I am. It's very funny, but I'm a classical pianist who has played with two of the most amazing drummers in the world
mm.
ever. And sometimes I joke with some of my rock and roll friends that I've never thought about putting a band or anything, but I've played with two drummers. And,
Not
so it's
not
very
only that, but it's a paradigm change, huge paradigm change in terms of the kind of young artists we're putting out, and you're one of them. This huge diversity of interest and expertise. It's brilliant. It's
So
brilliant.
to back to your
Yeah.
question, one of the Slayer songs we experimented with was that particular song with the thunders. So I thought I would recreate those thunders with the strings of the piano, and actually that's available on YouTube if people put the name of the song and my name. And it's still there. I might remove it at some point. I don't know. It's so far, it's so good. and it's not getting a lot of attention. It's fine because I don't do really a lot of covers. I'm not into covers
Hmm.
of songs in general. I
Hmm.
like more original stuff. But later on, I decided to use the idea of the thunders and to create my own piece, which that's how the Dark Side of the
Now
Sun
I get
happened.
it.
Because the album is so full of positive energy, of light, of passion. I felt like the Dark Side of the Sun is like an element where I can say, well, this is not bad, but I like to play with the fire.
Oh, that
It's
was not only was
like
that a brilliant.
because Slair's music is pretty dark.
By the way, not only was that a brilliant remark, but the face you gave at the end of it is positively, I wanted to say terrifying, thrilling, exciting, mesmerizing.
Playing with fire.
The mischief, the mischief in you.
The
Yeah.
title was formulated by my producer. Apparently, there's an album called to call it the Dark Side of the Sun because it's like if the sun had a dark side, how would you play with fire? Or how would you play with light? Or
And I'm
sorry,
trying to remember the band. Isn't that a famous, famous album? A very
oh,
famous
Pink
band?
Floyd,
Pink
most
Floyd,
the
I was
biggest
thinking. Yeah.
thing in music history. I don't know if that will be beaten any time again
No.
since nobody
Yeah.
buys music anymore and it's streaming. But I made it on Billboard Top 10, so still people buy it. They
Yeah.
should keep buying so I can come back on the chart.
Oh, I get you. Hey, we're having a little trouble now. We got you back. Sometimes there are little pauses. I think quickly because we're starting to get a little
Oh, I
past
hear
ourselves.
well.
Pardon? I wanted to just give me a quick overview of the Nikolai Kapustin, the jazz concert etudes, performed with technical wizardry and pizzazz. That's what I said about it.
Thank you. I love these two etudes. They're two of my favorites. And I discovered Nicola Kapustin here in the United States. Somehow I've never heard of him in Bulgaria. And I'm very grateful because I do like also the music of George Gershwin and other American composers. Usually, a lot of jazzy pieces I associate with more American composers, but this is obviously an Eastern European Russian composer.
Mhm.
So I do have a lot of fun. And even though there are jazzy elements and harmonies in the Bulgarian pieces, uh, but in a very different way than
Yeah.
Kapustin. Kapustin himself was a jazz pianist too.
Huh, now I just now understood what you just finished saying. The subtlety of your observations of Russian jazz and uh, other jazz, American jazz and other jazz, if I understood you at all.
You're able to hear me well.
Sure. No, I meant
The
if my brain comprehended you at
service
all.
time with the FaceTime, it's not always.
Yeah, sometimes it falls off. So let's see. We've talked about the personal. Here's one that gets me. Can you? Are we on? Good enough. You can hear me. Uh, I'm thinking of Del Mano del Barro, and just how what a fun piece that is. You sing a little bit. I mean, and then the variations are incredible. And also this. It's titled with a little tongue in cheek. Ritmico y distorsionado, and how you play with that. Just give us that. That's the last piece on the CD, I think, number 14. Yeah.
Well, this is basically Ruvido ed ostinato from track 7, but we decided to play with the words and call it ritmico distorsionado because the way we're interpreting the music with adding the drums, and there were a couple of elements of distortion, not through the entire piece, but on
Hmm.
certain places. So we interpreted the piece in a little bit more rhythmic way on track 14 and also adding some of the distortion. So it's a little bit like playing with words and but technically, it's Hinostare's music, and it's the last movement of the sonata.
Yeah, fair enough. And you played with it. Come on now.
I mean, we actually were joking about the distortion. I think somebody said something that I should disturb my piano, and that's what they do in rock and roll. So
Yeah.
my producer worked with a lot of famous bands back in the day, and I was joking. I totally didn't believe it's possible, and I said, "Hey, Ron, do you think we could actually distort the piano for real?" And if I talked to any other friends, they kind of thought, "Oh, maybe we could just kind of connect it to a guitar amp, but then it's gonna sound like a guitar." And I
Uh-huh.
said, "Isn't that how it works?" Because my producer is sound expert.
Yeah.
So then he said, "No, we can distort the piano." And then I said, "Okay, I want to hear how that sounds like." And then when we did that at his studio, I couldn't believe that the piano could sound like this, and I just decided to keep it that way.
Yeah. Absolutely.
We did save a version of the piece without the distortion, though. We
Yeah.
saved a version, but for the album itself, we decided to keep it that way, just for fun.
Exactly. Just for fun, playful, tongue in cheek. Like I said, the whole CD is just a lot of fun. And by the way, this is including you basking across the piano. All of it is called sales. You know, seriously, you have put together a package not only artistically and musically, but just a cute, wonderful piece. By the way, it's a beautiful piece of packaging, and your notes about the pieces and all that. It's just a very personal CD. I think we're about done. Have I forgotten or missed anything important? What about what's coming up recently? I think, are you going to be out west sometime next spring or something?
I'm traveling a lot, so I actually next week I'm recording for the ESP label, music by composer Steve Hodge, and this is a very different project. It's
Hmm.
very Eric Satie-like.
Hmm.
So as you can see, it's not rhythmic,
Uh-huh.
dynamic, that kind of energy, but it's more atmospheric
Hmm.
with intimate colors, musical colors, and then after that, I'm working on my next album, which I would like it to be all original music, all
Nice.
my own compositions. And in the meantime, I will be making plans for another album similar to Rhythmic Movement. I don't want to say exactly similar, but I would like to continue to expand the idea of how to say that kind of energy of
Yeah.
rhythm. And I would like to connect traditional composers of the 20th century with some contemporary composers as well. As you can see, I'm in a very interesting place because, um, in the classical music, contemporary music, usually it's a little bit a step more avant garde. So if anybody was listening to my album, they don't really categorize it on contemporary exactly. If contemporary music specialist listens to this, it's not enough avant-garde because it
Hmm.
sticks to tonality rather than
Hmm.
atonality.
The Bates piece, even, for
But
example.
then
Yeah.
traditional experts wouldn't put it exactly traditional because it's not music by Beethoven, Bach, or Mozart, which of course I've played over the years in order to establish myself where I am.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting place where the music really is accessible. It's new music, 20th and 21st century. So I feel like I have found my own style, how to be unique and different, and that's great. But sometimes it's hard to kind of put you in the right box because the
Yeah.
industry likes to put artists in boxes and labels and categories.
Not
So
to, not to worry. Paradigm change, as I mentioned earlier, is in the works all over the place, and this is one of them where the people are puzzled. Which box do we put this pianist composer in? This jazz artist, classical Beethoven player? Where do we put her? And they'll figure it out.
okay.
We'll move. It'll all move ahead. The paradigm change is big, people and culture. Even as we have mentioned earlier, it's sometimes I wonder, about our profession and so on, but just a little bit because I see so much illiteracy around me. I'm sure you do as well. But somehow, culture and art and people wanting to have a better view of the world and so on carries on. So, including yourself, by the way, thank you very much for giving me a great opportunity to hear your first CD and actually even review it. And can't wait for future releases.
We'll
Uh,
definitely touch.
oh, thank you very much. So, pianist and may I say composer Tania Stavreva, great pleasure chatting with you. I'll throw this up on your page at performingartsreview.net, and people can go there and they can move on to your website as well and buy the CD. It's a wonderful piece. Thanks. See you.
Bye.